Imagine waking up in the morning and not having to go to a 9 to 5 job. Imagine waking up and looking at your bank account and seeing that you actually made money for yourself overnight passively. And that doesn't mean that you're not putting in any work. Obviously, it takes a lot of work and dedication and drive in order to create that passive income in the first place. But the big question you might be asking is, how can I create wealth in my life? How can I take the money that I'm earning from sales or in my business or in the company that I'm working with, and how can I use that in order to create generational wealth, to do the things that I want to do, to support my family in the way that I want to support them, to send my children to great schools, to travel the world, whatever it is you want to do? You might be asking, how should I be investing my money? Well, we're talking to someone today who is not only a real estate agent, not only a real estate investor, but also a master of sales. And I'm going to introduce you to him in a second. His name is Luke Andrew. But this conversation is for you if you want to know where you can invest your money, where you can begin when it comes to real estate investing, as well as what are the secrets of sales success from this man who's been in the world of sales for practically his entire life. Then you know this conversation will be for you. You know the fee for the broadcast. We're not going to show you any ads. We're not going to show you any sponsors. When you take away something that is helpful for you, a philosophy, a strategy, a new way of thinking, maybe we made you smile, then share this show with just one person who could use it as well. This show has grown to over 200 episodes and thousands of viewers over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, because of you, because you're the best part of the Be Better team, and I'm grateful to you for that. So without further ado, let's talk to our special guest today. His name is Mr. Luke Andrews. And for those who don't know Luke, Luke is a real estate entrepreneur who sells, leads, and invests. He is a best-selling author who has purchased 40 rental properties before turning 40 and has a passion for changing people's lives through real estate. Luke, it's a pleasure to have you here, brother. Thanks for being on the show.
Brandon, I'm so excited to be here.
All the way from Kentucky, man.
All the way from Kentucky.
I love that. Super cool. Did you start your real estate journey in Kentucky? Did you move there? Like, what has your journey looked like up until this point?
Sure. So I grew up here in Kentucky, but right after college, my wife and I were newly married and we moved to Denver for 10 years. And have been back in Kentucky. We came back here a little over 8 years ago. And my real estate investment journey briefly started in Colorado. I mean, we were just at a point where we kind of kept our first house as a rental property and had that for several years. But my journey into real estate sales, leadership, and truly my investment growth has all happened here locally in Kentucky.
Did you start as a real estate agent, like out of college? What did you go to school for? And what did your career look like before you actually began? Because 40 properties under the age of 40. I mean, you've been hustling these last few years, brother. So how did it begin for you?
So for me, I have a degree from Western Kentucky University in sales marketing. And I came out selling newspaper advertisements in the early 2000s, which is, the perfect time, right? As newspapers are dying, that's the business, right? I moved out of newspaper sales fairly quickly and then moved over to insurance and financial services. And I was working for a Fortune 100 insurance company and then transitioned out of the sales role and into strategic marketing and data analytics. So that was where my most recent background was. And I realized I just wasn't fulfilled in that corporate 9 to 5.
Yeah, it wasn't scratching the itch that you wanted, right?
No, it wasn't. But I mean, it was so hard because it was like every time I would get up the courage to leave, they'd give me another raise or a bonus or something. So it was like, I've got this, what from the outside looks like this phenomenal job with a great salary and bonus and 401k and benefits and all of these other things. And I just wasn't happy. I was like, why am I going to work every day and working for someone else when I'm truly passionate about working for myself? And finally, one day I said, I just can't do it anymore. And I sat down and I put together this very detailed plan of, okay, what does the next 2 years look like? How can I transition over into working for myself? And that's what I did.
When you put that plan together, like what what inspired it? One, was it just the feeling of I'm not making the progress that I want? I'm not experiencing that fulfillment? Because I relate to it very much. I was in sales since I was 18, working for a great sales company, earning a lot of money, had all the things. People saw it from the outside and they're like, this guy is massively successful. But
Mhm.
really, I wasn't happy because, like you said, I wasn't doing something that excited me to wake up each day. It was just the same thing over and over. And I was making the money, but the money at a certain point isn't what makes you happy. Obviously, you need it in order to do the things like have a place to live, pay the bills, do those things, get the car. But after a certain point, it's like, okay, well, what am I really doing this for? So I relate to that. What inspired you to actually sit down and put this plan together? And how did you even, like, what questions did you ask yourself as you created this plan for the next few years of your life?
Sure. So, I mean, I'll start with the success piece that you talked about, because I think that's uber important. From the outside, everybody looks and they say, okay, well, you got this great job making six figures, and you have all of these what seemed to be perks. But I was at a conference and got to see Tom Bilyeu speak. And if you know Tom, he's the founder of Quest Nutrition. Really interesting guy, great follow on Instagram. But he said something that has stuck with me to this day. And he said, true success is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. It had nothing to do with the money. It was how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. And I just didn't feel great. I mean, like I wasn't doing, bad work. My corporation wasn't doing evil, awful things. I wasn't in, but I wasn't happy. And so I sat down and I started asking myself, what makes me happy? What are the things that I like about my job? What are the things that I feel like I'm good at? What are aspects where I feel like I can really help other people? And I loved solving solving puzzles, which I feel like real estate sales on a lot of days, it's like putting together this puzzle, right? You've got to
Yeah.
find all these pieces to work together. I really, really enjoyed negotiation. And then I just enjoyed real estate as an investment, because I started investing in real estate when I was in the corporate world. And I loved that piece of it. I loved having an investment that was something that was tangible, that I could go and I could physically go touch if I wanted to.
Mm.
And I could see not only the cash flow on a monthly basis, but also this appreciation on the backside. So I got super excited about it. And I thought, what better way to be on the inside than to actually get into the real estate business as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah. So you got into it while you were still in the corporate world. I guess kind of a loaded question here, but how did you begin in the terms of one, what inspired you to begin investing in the first place? Like, was it a person who was a role model? Was it a mentor? And when did you decide to begin?
So, as I mentioned, when we were in Colorado, we were fortunate enough. We built our first house in 2006, and it was right at the top of the market, and then the market crashed shortly after. That was in a time when my wife and I, we were starting to have kids. We needed more space, and we were very fortunate that to be able to upgrade at that point. Homes, everything was on sale, right? I mean,
Mm.
and we were fortunate enough that we were able to qualify for a new loan and still keep our existing home. And the market was filled with great people who needed rentals, who just they couldn't buy a house because they got caught in a bad loan before. So we
Yeah.
kept it. We moved back to Kentucky a little while later, and I met a guy at work, and we were both just talking and said, hey, real estate investment sounds really interesting. And we took walks every day, and we constantly talked about, okay, what can we do? How can we build this plan? How can we get out of this corporate rat race and start buying rental properties? Our
Mhm.
plan was to buy one property very inexpensively. There was a great up and coming neighborhood where you could get in for about $20,000 on a fixer upper. I mean, it would need a decent amount of work, but it was stuff that we could do ourselves. We wanted to pay cash, do the work ourselves, rent it out, and then do the Burr method, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. And as we're trying to identify this $120,000 property, a package of 13 rentals fell into our lap. And I
Whoa.
say fell into our lap, but it was, he was at dinner with his girlfriend's parents and they had some friends over. And of course, he was talking about things that he's interested in. And they said, well, it's interesting that you want to be in real estate investing. We actually have a portfolio that we're trying to liquidate because we want to retire.
Wow.
Do you want to buy this package? And of course, we wanted to. I sat
Yeah.
down, I ran the numbers. They made perfect sense. But first and foremost, I didn't have the capital to go buy 13 rental properties, and neither did he. We didn't have the contacts at banks to be able to go get the money for that. We didn't, even if we could, we didn't have the money for a down payment. We didn't know anything about how to invest and how to manage that many properties. We knew it was a great deal, but we kept hitting roadblocks everywhere that we turned. But through persistence, we finally decided, hey, let's go find people who have done this successfully and who own a lot of rental properties, and let's just find out what they do. Let's find out what they do on a daily basis, what they did to get to that point, and figure out, is there a roadmap or a recipe that we can just follow for success? And that's what we did. We found someone who was very successful that we knew somewhat, and brought them the deal. They analyzed it. They said, yes, absolutely, you can do this. They introduced us to some lenders, but we were still at this point where we didn't have the capital for the 20% down that we needed.
Yeah.
So we actually brought on this person that we met with, this mentor, came on as a partner.
Cool.
And again, in kind of this roundabout persistence way, we're still looking at it and even cutting it in half and taking 50% and him and his partner taking 50%. We didn't have enough for the down payment. But we knew this was such a phenomenal deal. So getting creative, I said, well, hey, what if you all put up the money that we're short? We'll still be 50-50 partners, but I will agree to manage the properties at no cost on a set schedule until that delta is paid off.
Wow.
And so that did a couple of things for us. One, it allowed us to get into this investment that was great, that we knew was great. It allowed us to be able to bring less money to the table. I didn't have to pull from my 401k to be able to make this deal work. And managing the properties, it taught us so much. Because you know what, managing a duplex that was built in 2006 that I used to live in didn't really teach me much about real estate investing, right? I mean, it was great passive income and I get to experience the appreciation and all of those things, but it didn't teach me anything.
Yeah.
Managing 13 units that you mostly rented out to college students, you learn pretty quick. You start learning the ins and outs of the business. But I think the important thing for us was not allowing all of those roadblocks and doors slammed in our face to stop us. If it was something that we knew was a good deal, we had to think outside the box a little bit. And that's really what started me on my journey. And that little bit of passive income also allowed me to be able to step away, quit my corporate 9-to-5 and go into business for myself.
Good for you, brother. What a story that is of someone who dipped their toes in the water, started with the duplex, moved somewhere completely new, was looking for an opportunity. I think this is the big part. A lot of people are like, well, where do I find the opportunity? You had no idea that 13 properties would fall into your lap in terms of this portfolio, and it very much didn't fall into your lap. You noticed the opportunity because you were looking for one. For a lot of other people, you wouldn't even have found out because the only reason you found out was that conversation you had with the people who were retiring. So your story is very much a quote unquote law of attraction story of you started, you had a plan, you knew what you wanted, and then things happened for you. But it wasn't magic. Like you only noticed it because that's what you were searching for.
Well, I've got a mentor, Sharon Srivatsa, who always says, your eyes only see and your ears only hear what you're looking for.
Wow.
Right. I mean, it's like the old adage, if you go out and you get a new vehicle and it's like, okay, well, I bought a blue Dodge Ram. Nobody else has a blue Dodge Ram. But the second you drive off the lot, you see them everywhere. And it's like, did everybody just go and buy one today?
Literally.
Because you bought one? No, they've always been there. It's just you weren't looking for them. Our eyes only see and our ears only hear what we're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like this started to scratch the itch of, wow, this is actually what brings me joy, is almost in a way taking risk. Like you there's no denying that you have to be for a certain amount of risk, or not be too risk averse when it comes to making a decision like that, because a lot of people, and I'm sure you did too, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to ask you, like, when you're about to make this decision to close on these 13 properties and bring several people in, now it's not just you, but it's the life of your friend, it's the life of your partner, it's these different personalities and egos and wants and needs coming into play. You must have been thinking, is this the best idea? What if this falls through? What happens if this doesn't work out the way I want? How am I going to figure this out? Am I too new for this? Am I getting over my head? Like, two-part question here. Have you always been someone who went for risk? Have you always been a risk taker, or is that something that started later in your life?
No, I have not always been a risk taker. In fact, I was always pretty risk averse. I grew up in a household where we didn't have a whole lot, and so everything meant something. So we didn't take a lot of additional risks because it was difficult. We couldn't afford the loss. Um, but again, going back to your eyes only see and your ears only hear what you're looking for. If that's what you think, I can't afford the loss, then you tend to, one, you try to avoid the losses, but it's almost like you fall into them sometimes. I had to shift my thinking into, I can't afford not to take this risk, right? It was, this is the only way to get me that true fulfillment and to see long-term success, especially even financial. I mean, in that corporate 9 to 5, even if I'm getting 5 and 10% raises per year, which in most cases they're giving you what they call cost of living raises, but with inflation, you're just not keeping up with it. This 2 to 3% every year of this stair step, you're just going up. I was looking for more of that hockey stick growth, and I was really willing to take the risk to go along with it because I knew getting into the real estate sales side of it, there were some external factors at play, but at the end of the day, I was betting on myself.
Yeah, that's it. 100%. You tried it once, it worked. You did it again, it worked. Now you're out of the corporate world, and I can only imagine that you're saying, "Wow, I can now take this time that I was putting towards my job and fully reinvest this into acquiring even more properties." So once you acquire this deal, you're managing those properties. Where does it lead to after that? What do you then set your sight on? Is it, I want to immediately get more properties, I want to increase the value of these? Like, what's the plan look like at that point?
Well, in the immediately following it, it was like, shoot, I'm drowning here. I got to figure out how to get this. How soon is my investment paid off so that I could go out and hire a property manager, right? But it was, once we kind of got our feet wet, we got a couple of months into it, and we realized, okay, we can turn a couple of rents, we can raise a little more money this way. By raising some of the rents across the board, we were able to speed up that schedule of payback, which was really nice. And it became, how can we get more properties? And that's when I really got that itch of, I need to be in real estate full time. My wife was a real estate agent. I saw what she was doing. I thought, I can be really, really good at this. And again, that's when I started sitting down and formulating that plan of, okay, what does it look like for my family if I move out of this corporate safety net, this 9 to 5, and move over into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you rose to over 40 properties, and you're, what, are you now in your late 30s at this point?
So we closed on our 40th about 8, 9 weeks ago, and I will be 40 on September 1st. So, I mean, it just kind of barely
Congratulations.
squeaking in under the wire, but that purchasing 40 before the age of 40. Now, some of those we've bought and sold, we've traded over time. But I have learned so much from each and every one of them. I've had partnerships that have gone south. I've had deals that have gone south. I've had, bought one to flip, but the flip went so poorly that we had to hold on to it as a rental for 2 to 3 years and just hope that we got some of our money back out of it. Every deal, there is some version of a learning experience. And I can tell you that first 13 that we bought, after the first month or two, the cash flow, we started finding all this deferred maintenance that was in there, and the cash flow just went away completely. And
Wow.
each month we were feeling lucky if we broke even that month. But we managed to kind of Band-Aid and keep it together and held on to them for about 2.5 years. And then we were able to sell that and realized a great appreciation because we cut such a good deal when we purchased. In real estate investing, we say you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. It's about getting that deal on the front side to be able to capitalize on the backside.
Yeah. I know some people are listening and they're like, this just seems like way too much for me to understand. Appreciation and having the capital to put down and how to know what property is a great property and where should I buy. Like, it's a lot. And I can only imagine that you had to learn a ton before you even bought the duplex and made that move. And your wife being a real estate agent, that's something you're both in the world of. For some people who don't have a spouse, or their spouse is in a completely different world, or even worse, their spouse is against the idea of investing, which is an entirely other conversation for another time, maybe on relationship mastery, right? But I guess my question for you, because you seem like a very well-learned individual, you have to be in order to be in this world. How
Sometimes yes,
important?
sometimes no.
Yeah, 100%. And you learned through the doing at the same
Yeah,
time, but you seem
absolutely.
like someone who didn't just do and then learn. You seem like someone who took the time to really learn what you had to learn. I guess rather than ask you how much time did you put into the education piece of this before you even took your shot the first time, how did you know when to stop educating yourself and actually make the leap?
Well, it's kind of this blurred line, right? And I can't say that I was fully educated when I made the deal. I started talking to people that I knew who were in real estate, and I've always found it important to have a good, solid team around me. I've never been, like I just want to be completely individual. I want to have advisors, mentors, people that I can ask questions to. And so my focus was really on single family homes. And then when this package of small multifamilies came about, we didn't have a whole lot of time to do a lot of research. So had been looking at properties. I understood the basics of the investing. But when that deal fell in our lap, it was more than anything just learning the numbers, because the numbers on a single family home versus the numbers on a multifamily are fairly similar, right? I mean, the principles are the same. The numbers are different, but the principles are the same. It's like, does it cash flow or does it not?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was basically just able to run that at scale. It may not be the best answer for the question that you're looking for, but we educated ourselves as much as we absolutely could. But at a certain point, we can't control the timing of when the deals come through. And
Mm-hmm.
so you just have to feel like, if this is a good deal, I just have to pull the trigger.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's an example in all of our lives in many different ways, when to actually pull the trigger and take action. You created the plan, you knew what you wanted, you did this one time, and you're like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do it now, because an opportunity like this might not come along, right? And you learned while you did it at the same time. Now, you mentioned single family homes was a great place to start, and you did a lot of research when it comes to that.
Mhm.
I guess rather than ask you a yes or no question, what kind of investment would you tell people, based on your own experience, is the best place to start, or is it different for everybody?
It's a little different for everybody, but I think single family homes are, if you ask me, just said, hey, you can only give me one answer, where's the best place for somebody to get started? It is a small single family home,
Okay.
um, because it's what people are typically most familiar with. Um, you have you have a tenant who's paying their own utility bills, who's generally taking care of the yard on their own, and you're typically just dealing with one tenant. When you go into the small multifamilies, the duplexes, the triplexes, the quadplexes, forget going into larger apartment buildings, but just kind of that 2, 3, and 4 unit, you're dealing with multiple tenants. Who's paying on time, who's not paying on time, keeping all of that straight. Many of these smaller buildings, the owner is responsible for at least the water of the building, if not the electricity as well. And so you're trying to bake that into the rent, but not knowing exactly where that's going to come from. And then if the tenants aren't paying their own utilities, they are far less cognizant of how much they're using. Showers get longer, lights get left on, all of that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Um, and if you've got, let's say, a triplex that you're working on, instead of a single family home where you have one furnace, one water heater, one air conditioner, all of a sudden you're dealing with 3 furnaces, 3 water heaters, 3 air conditioners. And Murphy's law says that if one's going out there, two or three of them are coming, and those are big expenses that you have to come through. So I think if somebody is just getting started, a small single family home is a great place to get going.
Okay, cool. Now people are wondering at the same time, okay, well, when do I know that now is the time to begin looking for a property and pull the trigger on a property? Like you yourself, you were working at a corporate job, right? You bought the
Mhm.
duplex, you were living in the duplex at the same time, which, obviously we know this, but for someone listening, that means you're paying half the rent, the other person's paying it, but the other person probably covered most of the rent for the building in the first place. So your rent was probably pretty low at that time when you were living.
House hacking is what they call it if you're living in one side and renting out the other. Yeah, and you're right. It's the other side is paying a good chunk of the mortgage for you, and so you're living there for next to nothing. And so it's less of a cash flow play at that point and more of an appreciation play
Yeah,
until you get to a point to where you can move out and you can rent the other side, and then that's where the cash flow really starts building
gotcha.
up.
Is there a certain place someone should be financially in order to make the decision to begin investing in real estate, in terms of, okay, well, you had a 401k, how much should you have in reserves? Like, when would you recommend, obviously it's all different for each person, but I'm sure that
Sure.
there's a general practice. What would you recommend to people?
Well, I mean, you want to make sure that you're talking to a trusted lender, unless you're at a spot where you can pay cash for houses. There's different philosophies of investing. There's those, kind of on that Dave Ramsey camp of you pay cash for everything. You don't want to have any debt. And then you've got the Robert Kiyosaki's, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, who you finance and leverage every possible thing that you can. And then most of us fall kind of somewhere in the middle. But if you're not at a spot where you can pay cash, you need to make sure that you're talking to a lender to figure out, okay, can I even get approved for a loan? Do I have enough for a down payment? What does that look like? And then realizing, okay, well, I've got enough for the down payment, and then I need to have a couple months of that mortgage payment set aside. Um, Again, in case it takes 2 months to find a tenant, or you do need an air conditioner, a water heater, a furnace, something like that. You just want to make sure that you're not stretching yourself too thin. However, real estate is something that historically over time, even with the few little minor dips that we've had, um, has gone up significantly over time. So it's like the same thing of when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, 50 years ago. When's the next best time? It's only going to get more expensive over time. So you can take as much advantage of that appreciation as you can by getting in earlier. But again, you just want to make sure that you're not putting every last dime or dollar that you have into buying these properties.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great answer.
I've seen
Guys,
some people that have put down payments on credit cards. I am not a proponent of that. All you tend to hear about are the success stories with like, oh, well, I put my first down payment on a credit card 15 years ago. And now it's like I've got this multi-million-dollar portfolio. They're not bringing the people on the podcast who put their first down payment on a credit card and then they filed bankruptcy twice and
yeah.
lost everything that they had.
Yeah, I think a lot comes down to the risk you're willing to take for yourself too, whether you have a family, whether you have children. Like obviously it's very personal, but ask yourself, like what is your risk score or whatever you want to call that. And then ask yourself too, how bad do you want this? Is this something that you really want? Are you committed to this? Like you were committed. And then after you committed once, like start small. Like you started with the duplex, you house hacked. And for someone else out there, you could do the same thing, or you could buy another house near you in your neighborhood. Like my question for you too is kind of like a minor, a micro question here, but when you moved from Colorado to Kentucky, did you sell the duplex or did you keep that investment?
We kept it.
Wow.
We kept it for 2.5 years.
Okay.
Once we moved back. The market was still recovering as we were leaving. And so we were still underwater on that place. And as long as we had people that were there paying the mortgage for us, we were perfectly fine. But right as the time we were transitioning out and moving over was the legalization of marijuana.
Mm.
And Colorado being the first state that did that, people flooded to the state. And then so we went in this small period right after we left. It was about a 12 to 18 month period where we went from being $30,000 underwater on the house to $45,000 in the black. And then so we're at the point where it's like, okay, well, does it make sense to sell it now? Is it going to continue to rise? What does it look like?
What
But
does that mean
eventually,
in the black? Is that above water?
correct. So
Okay.
we had about a $75,000 swing in value. So going
Wow.
from, we owed $30,000 more than it was worth to owing to owing $45,000 less than what it was worth in about 18 months.
Wow.
I mean, it was just this massive, massive swing.
Yeah, that must have been nice because you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably had no idea they were going to legalize marijuana there.
Right. And
Yeah,
so it was just like, okay, well, I mean, it's property values are rising significantly and things are really looking up for us.
that's awesome. What a cool story. Your story is great. Your story is great because you are you were a person who worked a corporate job who wanted more for himself. You didn't just start with a giant deal like Grant Cardone says. Don't start until you can get 40 or 50 units at least, right? Several $100,000 down, maybe close to $1 million down. But you started with the duplex and then you moved to the next and you moved to the next and you continued to build and build and learn as you go. And it's very much a story of start small and continue to take small steps and watch your success and watch your achievements compound.
It is absolutely, yeah, it's perfect that you mentioned that because Grant Cardone specifically, like I've followed Grant for years and years, and Grant is fantastic. But his 10x and go big, go huge, whatever. I was in this point where I knew I needed to make some changes in my life. I knew I needed to change some things to be happy. And Grant was one of the ones I was following. And, his advice was like, okay, well, you need to just quit your job, sell your house, go find the person in the country who's doing it better than anybody else, move to wherever they are, agree to work for them for free for a year just to learn as much as you can. And then you're on your way. I was like,
Wow.
well, that's phenomenal advice, but I've got a wife and two kids, and I've got a mortgage on a couple of properties, and the grocery store doesn't accept hugs and good feelings and well wishes. Cold hard cash, right? And I started a system at that point. I said, there's got to be a way for people like me to just make small little incremental changes on a daily basis that add up to these exponential gains. So that was something specifically that I did. And I even wrote a book about it several years ago. And that was, fortunate enough, it became an Amazon bestseller. But it was called Small Steps, Sizable Gains. And it was all about just a
Wow.
small little thing you can do on a daily basis to make these exponential changes. And it was all based around Grant Cardone great advice, wasn't practical for me. And I figured it wasn't practical for a big chunk of the country. So
What your system that you help people with, because I know you also have an ebook. And by the way, for those listening, link in the description to go grab this ebook that literally goes through Luke's system when it comes to real estate, small steps, sizable gains. What does your system look like? Like, I'm sure it's everything we've talked about, but does it have a name? Does it have like a specific process? Could you give us like a taste of that?
Sure. So, I mean, I don't really know that it has a name. Small Step Sizable Gains was something that was more just about life changes that I did several years ago. But my book on investing that I did about 9 months ago, I was helping a lot of young investors get into the market who have never done it. And it's something I'm super passionate about. I'm very passionate about real estate investing. And I wanted people to learn from the mistakes that I made. I didn't want them making the same mistakes that I did. And so what I did is I took the mistakes that I was making and the mistakes I was seeing these other young investors make, and I wrote a book about the 10 mistakes that every investor makes buying their first property. And it was, like I said, I had self-published a book before. I was making some passive income on that. And I thought, oh, great, this will be another opportunity. But one day, as I was getting ready to publish it, it hit me and said, if you're genuinely passionate about this, if it's something that you're genuinely passionate about, then you need to put your money where your mouth is. Don't charge for this. Make it 100% free. And so that's why there's no physical copy. It's an ebook only. If you go to 10investormistakes.com, and that's the number 10investormistakes.com, you can download it 100% for free.
Incredible. Guys, links are in the description to go check that out.
It's all about just the things. Here's what I did. Here's where I screwed up. Here's some of the things some misconceptions that I had. Here's some mistakes that I see others making, about taking on. I address a lot with partnerships and a lot with down payments and finance, leverage versus paying cash, whether or not you should hire a property manager, those things. They're all things that I address in the book because there's something that it's what everybody's thinking about. And one of the reasons that it holds people up from actually jumping in and taking the leap. And I want to get as many people involved in it as I can.
That's great. And real estate is one of the best forms of investments because, like you said, you can actually go there and touch the building, unlike you having your money in the market, which is another great way. We can have someone on the show in the future to talk about that too, but you can't touch the stock market. I guess you can go to Wall Street and do that, but it's different.
I mean, if you look at my household, we're invested in Amazon, and we're touching an Amazon package just about every day that's on.
That's true. That is a fair point. Now, in the world of real estate, you're selling every single day of your life. And I say this all the time. We're all selling every single day with our relationships, with our job, with our business, every single area of life. Mm-hmm. I've been obsessed lately with asking people who've been in sales for a long time what you believe your number one law of success to be. And and you call this your number one law of sales success because you use it in every sales conversation you have. It's something you go back to constantly. It's something you would never negate in your sales or negotiation process. What would you say has been the number one sales law or principle that has played a significant part in your life journey and career?
Well, and I can tell you, I've got two. And they're two that I work on a daily basis. The first is just have a willingness to solve problems. It is a willingness to go out and find problems and solve problems. And the second is I am working every single day on being the most effective communicator that I can be. I think effective communication, is something that we're starting to lose in our society as everything is moving to digital. And whether it be Zoom or phone calls or really just text messages and emails, so much gets lost in that communication that all of these deals are slipping through the cracks. There's so much miscommunication and misinterpretation because you can't read context or tone within a text message or an email. And so becoming an effective communicator is something that I've been uber passionate about, something I work with my agents on a daily basis on just very small. I've got just kind of 3 small things that I have them do that are effective in every situation, every negotiation that they have. It doesn't have to be industry specific. It doesn't have to be situation specific. It's just something that a little mnemonic device that they can remember that they do on a regular basis.
It's so important, brother. It's like how Warren Buffett says that his greatest investment in himself and his business was his Dale Carnegie course that he went to on public speaking and learning how to communicate with people in a public setting. But like you said, even in this online world, I get messages every single day in my inbox of people looking to sell me things. And it's like, you don't know me. I don't know you, right? You don't know what my problem even is. So how can you solve a problem that you don't even know exists? Like just knowing how to communicate, but also not knowing how, but knowing when to communicate when it comes to a deal, or when it comes to your spouse, or when it comes to your career, communicate with your boss or your customers, your clients, whatever it is. How do you work to continue to become a more effective communicator today in your own life?
Sure. So I work, like I said, I teach my agents this kind of little mnemonic device. We call it the 3 Ps. First is being prepared. and understanding that you can't be prepared for every situation that comes your way in the moment, but you can know your market inside and out. You can know your processes inside and out. If you know a situation is coming up, starting to practice some scripts, having word tracks in place. So, like I said, number one is being prepared. Number two is posture. I tell them sitting up straight, looking someone in the eye. So even if you're on the phone, finding a mirror, a reflection in a window, something, standing up a little bit straighter, it allows you to speak with more confidence. And then looking someone in the eye, especially when you're face to face, it conveys a confidence which drives your competence, right?
Mm.
And then number three is projecting. I tell them that you need to speak just a little bit louder than you feel like you need to. Um, and I tell them, make sure that you're not shouting, but I always have them go back to a time where they've been to a conference or remembering a time in high school where somebody had to get up and give a presentation and they were speaking very softly, their voice was cracking, all of a sudden that person loses credibility.
Yeah.
And so by speaking just a little bit louder than you need to, it forces you to project. It removes that speaking softly, and it removes the potential for any cracking of the voice, because as soon as your voice cracks in the negotiation, the other side knows that they have the upper hand. We're trying to not
Wow.
overload leverage in any way possible. And so just that little tip, that little trick just keeps the leverage in their court just a shade longer, so that they can make sure that they're winning every interaction that they have.
Oh, what powerful tips in general. I absolutely love that. Prepare yourself, be very conscious of your posture. Like, I train salespeople, and one of the things we do for those who do make cold calls, which is still very prevalent in today's world,
Mhm.
is stand up, make the calls while standing up, right? Before you make the call, prepare your mind of the way that the other person's going to receive the call. Know your verbiage, know your script, or, whatever your talk track is. And you're absolutely right about the projection, like the way that you speak, where you speak from. Do you speak from your head, or are you speaking from your diaphragm, your stomach? Like, all of these quote unquote soft yet very important skills are so vital to your success in sales, in person, on the phone, even in your email communication, looking through and saying, what doesn't need to be here? A great way to project in an email is to remove all of the junk that doesn't need to be there, so that you're only enunciating what's necessary for the other person to take in.
Well, I've started, even on my text message communication, doing a lot of video and voice, just sending over little voice messages.
Yeah.
Because again, I've had so many instances where my tone has gotten misinterpreted or misconstrued, and it's gotten me into trouble. And then if I do it by voice, it speeds things up a little bit. I can talk faster than I can type. I can talk while I drive. I can't type while I drive.
Yeah.
And anybody that's listening, don't type while you drive. Don't text and drive. But I can talk while I do that, and so it saves me other time throughout my day. So it's speeding things up, and I feel like that my tone is conveyed better. That I can better convey my message as I send it over by sending voice and video messages as opposed to just traditional typing.
Absolutely love it. That's a great tip for everyone out there. I had a friend who used to send voice messages before it was cool to send voice messages, and I still think it's very it's an unknown thing. People aren't doing it to the point where they should be. It's just more human to receive a voice message from someone. But this guy did it 2 years ago, and he sent me like 2 minute long voice messages, and I was like, oh my God, dude, I don't have time to listen to this. And I slowly learned to love it, though, because I would find the time to listen to it. I would be driving and I would listen. And then I started to do it. And then my clients now, because I coach other people who are, doing podcasts and shows and want to get more out there, and they're sales professionals or coaches in their own right. And I'm like, send voice messages to your clients, because they all say, I love when you send voice messages to me, even if it's 1 minute. It just means a lot more than you typing something back or whatever it might be. So definitely pick that up, guys, because that's still something a lot of people aren't doing because they're afraid to do it, or they're nervous to do it, or they don't even know that it's an important thing. Or, like you said, take it to the next level and do a video message and send over a quick short video.
Well, and nobody's doing it. So it's a way for you to stand out in the noise. Like everybody is sending text messages now. All of these salespeople are sending text messages now. Be the one who's the contrarian that's doing it just a little bit different.
Well said. Absolutely incredible. You've shared so much when it comes to real estate, but also the laws of sales success. I love that, especially because it was just off the bat, not prepared. Amazing. My question for you now is, now that you've got these 40 properties, you just closed on the 40th one, which is absolutely incredible. Congratulations to you. What's the mission now? Like what's the plan, like you did for yourself at the very beginning where you sat down, you put that plan together? What does the plan look like for you now?
So I've stopped looking at a specific number, right? I want as many of the right ones and none of the wrong ones. My real estate mentor, Jay Pitts, he's always said, as we've talked about continuing to grow our team and doing the things that we're doing, we say we want as many of the right people and none of the wrong people. And I want the same from a property perspective. You know, if they cash flow and make money, I want to consider it and I want to try to bring it into my portfolio. I don't necessarily have a wheelhouse or a plan any longer. It really is just all about the investment. And I've missed out on a lot of great opportunities because I had just a very rigid plan. And so I've started kind of straying away from that a little bit. Now, in the beginning, I absolutely recommend that you've got a strategy, you have a plan, that you stick to it. But for me, once I've started growing, you know, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, something I was never interested in. But we just picked one up not long ago, and it's been phenomenal.
Wow.
And I feel like I'm behind the times on it. Like I could have picked up several more, but I didn't because I was opposed to it. I was way too rigid. But now it's just, I want as many of the right ones, none of the wrong ones.
I love that. Just being very smart about how you pick and what you choose. Amazing. Luke, thank you so much for what you shared here today. It's a pleasure meeting you. And I know that people listening are going to take a lot of this away in terms of the what to do, when to do it, how to do it, but also just the principles of what will help you to be successful in this world of real estate, sales, but also how to find purpose in life. I'm gracious to you. Thank you very much, brother.
Well, I appreciate it, Brandon. It's been a blast, man. Had a great time this morning.
Where's the best place, by the way, that people can follow you? What platform?
Sure. If you go, you can find me on LinkedIn at Luke Andrews. You can find me on Instagram, Luke Andrews RE for real estate, or just go to my website, lukeandrews.us. There's access to books, courses. Follow me on social channels or email or however they want to do it. If you send me an email that's on there, or you can go right to Luke at lukeandrews.us. I answer all of my own emails. If somebody just has just a general question on how do I get started on real estate, talk to me more about those 3 Ps, whatever it is, I'm happy to answer anything I can to help out anybody I can.
Awesome. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. And I look forward to having you on the show next time in our next conversation.
Sounds great, brother.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Luke.
it. Bye.
If anything, you've seen that the information is out there to do what it is you want to do. And if you're someone who is in that corporate job, you've got your own business, whatever it is, and you're ready to make that next step to create an empire for yourself or to create a legacy for yourself and for your family, or even to challenge yourself in a new, interesting, and fun way in order to unlock that next piece of the puzzle, right? To put those pieces together, like Luke was mentioning before, then real estate investing could be for you. And you heard Luke's story. And if that excites you, if you're saying, wow, this is something I want to learn more about, this is something where I feel I connect with Luke, I want to take this to the next level, then go down to the description and grab Luke's ebook on the 10 mistakes that he's seen so many people make so that you can avoid those mistakes when you're making your first or your next real estate investment. And for you salespeople, which we're all that, you now have 2 laws of sales success: the willingness to solve problems and add value, 1, and become an effective communicator, both in verbal and written and in all different ways. And there's so many different ways you can do that. We've had a lot of people come on the show to talk about communication and leadership and presentation skills. But however you do it, because it's going to help you in your life in every single area, not just sales, not just real estate. But if it is real estate, then I hope that this conversation served you well. And if you took away even just one thing, share this show with one other person who's interested in real estate or investing or creating true financial freedom for themselves and for their family. Thank you for being the best part of the Be Better team. And until you and I talk again next time, continue to be better.